No cliches, no, I never thought I'd end up here, no white-knuckle steering wheels, no heel-clicking, no generic, we were married X years, padding. Very dynamic, twist-heavy plots with strong confrontation, long, saturated parts, each one central and necessary, no filler, no violence, no blood, no weapons, no explicit content, English only, one clean style, no emojis, no headings, no swear words. Next time I write the 9 parts for this story, I'll stick strictly to these rules. I was halfway through brushing my hair when I heard Mason's laugh echo faintly from downstairs, sharp, too loud, almost forced, the kind of laugh you let out when your heart's still trying to catch up with something your brain already suspects. I paused, brushed midair, suddenly hyper-aware of how quiet the house had gone. No more footsteps, no drawers opening, just silence thick enough to press on your lungs. I didn't move, not until I heard the distinct creak of the old floorboard at the bottom of the stairs, the one he always stepped over when he was trying not to wake me up on late nights. When I peeked down, he was standing there still holding the basket of half-folded laundry, one sock in his hand. The look on his face wasn't confusion, it wasn't even hurt. Not yet. It was that raw, hollow kind of stillness people fall into right before everything they built starts to slip out from under them. I opened my mouth to ask what was wrong, but he spoke first. "Your mom say hi back?" I blinked. "What?" I FaceTimed her. She didn't answer. Then she texted, said she was watching a movie with the girls. He set the sock down like it might explode. "She ever say that before? The girls?" My stomach turned, not because I was caught, yet, but because I hadn't even thought of that detail. That's how sloppy I'd gotten. I'd sent that text so automatically, so carelessly, that I forgot the way my mother spoke in idioms from the 70s and refused to abbreviate anything, let alone casually refer to her bridge club as the girls. The pause in my answer must have been long enough, because Mason nodded once, walked past me, and headed for the office. No accusations, no shouting. That's what made it worse. And if you're already deep into the story, take 2 seconds, just 2, to hit like and subscribe. It helps us more than you know, and it keeps these stories coming. 97% of listeners forget to subscribe, but you're not one of them, right? He didn't say another word that night. Just sat at his desk like he was waiting for a signal. The next morning he made coffee, poured me a cup without looking me in the eyes, and asked how long I was planning to stay at Mom's. I told him I'd be back Sunday, that I just needed time. He said, okay, didn't ask questions, didn't follow up. That was the first real warning. Mason asked questions about everything. That was his thing, his way of staying connected. When he didn't, it meant he already knew the answers. By the time I backed out of the driveway that afternoon, I was sweating through my shirt, and it wasn't the heat. The lie felt heavier now, like it was sitting on the passenger seat beside me, smirking. I turned the radio up to drown it out, but it didn't work. Nothing did, and yet I still kept driving toward Aaron's place like I was possessed or like some part of me wanted to get caught. Aaron had just stepped out of the shower when I heard the knock, not the polite kind, the kind that's spaced out, deliberate, like someone trying to collect themselves between each rap of their knuckles. I froze in the middle of tying my robe. The house was still quiet, but my heart was hammering so loud I thought he'd hear it through the door. For a second I thought it might be a delivery or a neighbor, but something in my chest already knew. He looked through the peephole first, then turned to me with this pale, slow dread moving across his face. "It's him," he mouthed. My stomach flipped so hard I thought I might be sick. I pulled him away from the door and whispered, "How the hell is he here?" He didn't answer. Just motioned toward the back hallway like I should hide, like this was some high school movie and not real life about to collapse in on itself. 3 hours. That's how far Mason would have had to drive. 3 hours of silence, of building suspicion, of letting that quiet betrayal bloom in his head. I pictured him behind the wheel, gripping a box of pastries with one hand and a bouquet with the other, hoping to make his wife smile. My knees buckled. I heard another voice outside then. The neighbor, Mr. Pratt, I think, lived across the street, retired electrician, always outside messing with his sprinkler system. His voice was louder, urgent. Wait, don't go in yet, you need to know something." I peeked through the curtain just in time to see Mason standing still on the sidewalk, a bakery bag in one hand, flowers drooping in the other. The sight of him broke something in me. He looked so out of place, so wrong, like a character who'd wandered into the wrong scene of someone else's story. And the worst part, he hadn't come to fight. He hadn't come with suspicion or blame or fire. He'd come to surprise me. Mr. Pratt pointed to Aaron's silver coupe, parked carelessly across the street, and I watched Mason's eyes follow the gesture. Slow, calculated, as if he already knew what he'd see but still had to confirm it. I ducked back just before his gaze swept across the window. My breath hitched. Inside, Aaron paced, rubbing his face like he could erase it. I knew this was going to happen. I fucking knew it. Stop, I snapped. Don't talk. Just don't move. 'Cause now Mason was on the porch, not knocking, just standing there, listening. It was the silence that undid me, that thick, charged hush where the weight of everything hovers, daring someone to break it. And then, as if summoned by the guilt curdling inside me, there was the sound of a police radio chirping faintly from somewhere nearby. Mason hadn't called them. Mr. Pratt had. I watched from behind the curtain as two officers approached, calm but firm, like they'd done this kind of thing before, like they weren't surprised. One of them asked Mason a question, but he just pointed toward the house. His mouth didn't move, and I knew what was about to happen next. The knock wasn't loud, but it cracked through the air like a hammer. Not a neighbor, not a package, not even a flinch this time. I knew exactly who it was. And I also knew that Aaron, for all his cocky charm and flippant lines, didn't have the stomach for this part. He froze mid-step in the hallway, still damp hair, still shirtless under his robe. He looked at me like a kid caught shoplifting, ashamed, terrified, but not nearly sorry enough. "Do not open that door," I hissed, backing up. But it was too late. The shadow moved behind the frosted glass. A voice, calm but official. "Police department. Can you open the door, ma'am?" My heart thudded against my ribs like it was trying to break free from my chest. I reached for the doorknob with hands I couldn't steady. Every second that passed made it worse, louder, heavier. I knew Mason was out there. I could feel him, not angry, not shouting, just there, cold, watching. I opened the door and saw everything unravel in one slow stretch second. The officer glanced at me, took in the bathrobe, the mascara smudge under my eye, the flushed cheeks, and nodded. "Ma'am, we got a call about a potential domestic dispute. Just here to make sure everything's all right." "Dispute?" I echoed, voice too high. The second officer, standing behind the first, asked for IDs. Routine, nothing aggressive, but it felt surgical, like they weren't just checking names, they were confirming a reality I could no longer lie about. Aaron stepped forward and handed his over, shoulders hunched like a boy headed to detention. The cop flipped the ID once, then again, and asked Mason, "This the man you know?" Mason didn't look at me. He didn't look at Aaron. He looked at the name, said nothing, just handed the ID back and stepped down from the porch. And still, nothing in his expression changed. No fury, no disgust, only the kind of silence that speaks louder than any accusation could. The officers took a few more notes, then turned to go. No arrests, no drama. Just an ordinary house visit logged in an ordinary town. But I could feel the walls around my life buckling, because the man I married, who once cried at our wedding because he thought he didn't deserve me, had just looked through me like I was a stranger, like I had died somewhere along the way and left a cruel impersonation in my place. I stood there barefoot on the doormat watching the cops leave, and I could feel the air shifting. Aaron muttered something about this being blown out of proportion, about calling a lawyer, about how I should have warned him. I didn't hear any of it. I watched Mason walk away, and I knew in that moment I'd never be able to follow. By the time I made it back to our neighborhood, I knew something was off. The street felt quiet. Not just still, but stripped clean. No porch light, no motion in the blinds. Our mailbox was shut tight, no newspapers, no packages, and that white orchid I'd forgotten to water before I left. It was gone from the windowsill, just a dark square where it used to sit like a fragile truce between us. I parked halfway down the street. I don't even know why. Habit, maybe. Cowardice, more likely. I didn't want to pull into the driveway and see him through the kitchen window, arms crossed, waiting, but I also didn't expect what I got instead. Nothing. The porch light didn't flicker on when I approached. My key didn't fit. At first, I thought I'd grabbed the wrong one, dug around in my purse, Tried again, nothing, dead metal in a dead bolt. I rang the doorbell. Twice, no answer. I texted, no reply. I pressed my ear to the door like an idiot, like someone trying to hear a ghost breathing, and then I noticed the little details, subtle, surgical, the door frame freshly painted, the welcome mat replaced, a new deadbolt, bronze instead of silver. I stepped back and scanned the front of the house like it was a crime scene. It looked the same, but it wasn't. It had been edited, as if I'd been carefully erased. When I peered through the side window, the living room was immaculate, not a single throw pillow out of place, no coffee mugs on the table, the bookshelf, once cluttered with my travel guides, dog-eared poetry collections, and family photos, was now clean, sparse, a minimalist's revenge. My suitcase, the one I left half unpacked in our bedroom, gone. The coat I always left hanging by the stairs, gone. I called. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Blocked. I didn't know yet that by nightfall the day I got caught, Mason had already made the rounds. Quietly, methodically, he packed my things, every single piece, not in trash bags like someone angry, in boxes, labeled, taped, arranged. He didn't burn my photos. He didn't throw my shoes in the yard. He didn't so much as break a single glass. He made me disappear. He called my mother, who was appalled, humiliated, and admitted I hadn't visited her in weeks. He told her the boxes would be dropped off at her place. She asked if he wanted to talk about it. He said, "No need, it's handled." By Monday, he'd hired the locksmith. By Tuesday, my email access was gone. By Wednesday, I found out through an automated notice that my name had been removed from the lease, quietly, legally, completely. I called him from a different number. He picked up once and said nothing. I opened my mouth to explain and to lie again, maybe, or beg, or just say his name like it still meant something. He beat me to it, I know. Then he hung up. That was it. No accusations, no dragging me through the dirt. Just precision. Mason wasn't trying to hurt me. He was erasing the version of me that had done the hurting, and God help me. That stung more than any scream ever could. I never imagined the silence of my own kitchen could feel so unfamiliar. Not heavy. No, that left with her. But still strange, like I'd moved the furniture of my life just slightly enough that everything felt new and uncertain. I didn't play music that morning. Just the sound of the skillet crackling and the coffee pot clicking off and the soft rattle of ceramic plates against the oak table. She arrived just before 9, holding a small bag of groceries like it was an apology. Her mother, Donna, neat cardigan, hair pinned, lipstick, faint and trembling. I opened the door and she stepped in slowly, as if unsure she was welcome. "You didn't have to get anything," I told her. "I know," she said, not meeting my eyes. I thought maybe you'd still like the strawberry jam." I took the bag and set it gently on the counter, then motioned to the table. She sat. I made eggs the way she liked. Soft scramble, dash of pepper, no salt. She didn't say much as we ate. The toast was slightly burnt on one side, but she didn't mention it. I wanted to say something profound, something that would close the gap between us, built by a betrayal neither of us committed, but both now had to carry. Instead, I refilled her coffee. Twice. Halfway through her second cup, her hands started to shake. She gripped the mug like it was the only solid thing in the room. "I didn't raise her to be this careless," she said quietly, voice cracking. "She used to be so careful, so kind." I didn't respond, not with words. I just reached over and set the cream pitcher closer to her hand. Let her talk or not, let her cry or not. This wasn't about fixing something broken. It was about acknowledging what broke. She told me about the time her daughter had a fever at 5 and wouldn't let go of her hand for 12 hours straight. How she used to stay up late reading when she thought no one was watching. How she once sat with a crying girl on a school bus for 45 minutes because no one else did. She paused and looked at me then. Where did that version of her go? I didn't know, but I wanted to believe that maybe some part of her was still in there, that maybe she'd lost herself, not replaced herself. Donna dabbed her eyes with a napkin, then gave me a look I hadn't seen in years. Not pity, not guilt, gratitude. The kind that doesn't come from forgiveness, but from shared disappointment. She reached out and patted my hand. That simple. No speeches, no drama. Just the quiet understanding between two people trying to salvage something decent from a wreck. Later that day, she asked if she could stay for a while. Not forever, just for now. I said yes. I cleared out the guest room, laid fresh sheets, and found her the old paperback she used to read when she visited. She smiled like she hadn't in weeks, maybe months. That night, the house didn't feel lonely. It felt calm. We didn't talk about her daughter again. Not that night, not the next. Instead, we settled into a rhythm. Coffee in the morning, chores split without asking, laughter occasionally, real laughter. And when I looked across the kitchen and saw her pouring jam onto toast, humming faintly to a song from the radio, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe in days. This house could still hold peace, even if she never walked through the door again. I pulled up to the house just after 8, engine ticking as it cooled beneath the weight of my nerves. I didn't text, I didn't call. Some foolish part of me still believed I could just walk in and talk my way back into comfort, into normal. That if I turned the knob and stepped over the threshold, the house would absorb me like it always had, warm, familiar, forgiving. The key hit resistance. I twisted harder. Nothing. I pulled it out, checked it, tried again, still locked. It took a full 5 seconds for the truth to sink in. He'd changed the locks. The porch light remained dark. The windows were drawn. There was no wind, no sound, not even the usual rustling from the neighbor's oak tree. I stood there with my key in hand like a fool, staring at the door that used to swing open to my voice. I knocked, once, then again, louder, still nothing. I called. My number went straight to voicemail. I called again, same result. I backed away slowly, trying to make sense of the sudden cold in my chest. The porch light flicked on with a soft click, flooding the steps in sharp yellow. I shielded my eyes by reflex and looked toward the front window. And that's when I saw it. Her, my mother, at the stove, flipping something on a skillet with slow, practiced ease like she belonged there. She was wearing that gray apron Mason had bought me 2 Christmases ago, the one with the faint little olive oil stain near the hem. She moved with quiet purpose, reaching for a bowl, humming something under her breath. And then, Mason, leaning on the counter, calm, collected. He wasn't tense, he wasn't angry. He was at peace. His sleeves were rolled up. He was sipping tea or maybe coffee from the blue ceramic mug I once chipped during an argument we swore we'd never mention again. And he looked, God help me, happy. Not in a dramatic, spiteful way. In the way someone looks after a long, hard storm when they finally sit in the sun again. They didn't see me, or maybe they did and just didn't care. There was no rush to the door, no voice calling my name, no familiar tug of concern pulling the curtain aside. I stood on the front step like a stranger in my own life, and for the first time since everything crumbled, I realized the story hadn't paused without me. It had simply rewritten itself, without me in it. I tapped the glass lightly, desperate, silent. One last reach. Neither of them turned. Instead, my mother set 2 plates on the table. Mason opened a jar, probably that strawberry jam she always brought, and passed it across with a quiet smile. And I, still holding that useless key, finally understood. This door would not open again. The door opened before I could raise my hand again, not fast, not rushed, just a slow, inevitable swing, like the final move in a game I didn't realize I'd already lost. He stood there, Mason. No emotion on his face, none that I could name anyway. His eyes didn't search me for answers. They didn't soften. They didn't flare. They just saw me and made no room. He looked past me, into the night, then tilted his head slightly, like he was about to greet a mailman or a neighbor dropping by with a borrowed rake. "Hey, Mom," he said evenly, voice low and clear. "Your daughter's back from her date." I didn't breathe. Behind him, I heard the soft hiss of something burning. My mother's hand had jerked at the stove, the skillet half dangling off the burner, egg yolk spreading in a lazy spill across the stovetop. The metal pan clattered as she tried to catch it, but she was staring at me, frozen, not with shock, not even with disappointment, but with something worse, recognition. She knew who I was now, who I had become, not the daughter who cried in her arms at 16 when I broke my collarbone, not the one who helped her decorate Christmas cookies in Mason's old college hoodie. This version, this woman on the doorstep, with her lipstick smudged and desperation stiff in her jaw, was a stranger. And she didn't like her, The silence in that kitchen was louder than any scream I'd ever heard. Just the ticking of the burner, the faint pop of eggshells splitting underfoot, and the sound of Mason's hand on the doorframe, steady, unmoving. I opened my mouth, tried to speak, but the words collapsed before they left my throat. He didn't wait for them, didn't ask why, didn't demand an apology. He stepped back inside just one step, enough for the hinge to clear. Then, with a movement so smooth it felt rehearsed, he closed the door behind him. The latch caught, not a slam, a seal, the final punctuation on a chapter I didn't even get to finish writing. I stood there, alone in the glow of the porch light, hearing the faint clink of plates behind the door, the scrape of a chair, the slow return to whatever life they were now living without me, and I realized he hadn't locked me out. He'd simply stopped letting me in. The messages started hopeful, if hollow. "Can we just talk, please? I don't know what to say, but I'm sorry." He never replied. Not once, not with a period, not with silence that hinted at thought. It was like I was screaming into a canyon made of stone. I sent longer ones after that. Rambling apologies, layered with reasons that weren't really reasons. I told him I was lost, confused, overwhelmed, that Aaron didn't mean anything, that I didn't mean to fall apart the way I did, that if we could just sit down, face to face, I'd explain, make it make sense, patch over what I'd shattered. Nothing. Then came the courier. Not a knock this time, just a dull thud outside my motel room door, a thick envelope in a plain black satchel, delivered by a man who didn't look me in the eye. It was heavier than it looked. Inside, order, structure, finality, no theatrics, no cold words circled in red, no cheap shots, just a clean surgical document folder, title page stamped neatly with our names. And then below it, categories: property, finances, shared accounts. The contents read like a dismantled house, each section a window shut, each clause a door nailed shut. Even the signature line was already filled in, his part. I stood there in the parking lot under a sun that felt too bright for what was happening, my hands trembling as I flipped the last page. Paperclipped to the front was a note, his handwriting. Sharp, tidy, not rushed. "Some doors don't reopen. This is one." I don't remember how long I stood there. Long enough for a car to pull into the space beside me. Long enough for a child to shout in the distance and for the wind to catch the corner of the envelope, nearly dragging it away. I pressed it to my chest like it could warm me, but there was no heat in it, no second chances in the margins, no questions left unanswered, no thread left untied. Just silence. Arranged with the kind of care that can only come from someone who once loved deeply and now refuses to let that love be bruised any further. I slid down the side of the car, knees scraping the gravel, envelope still clutched like a lifeline. I'd severed myself. I wanted to scream, to run, to burn it. But I couldn't even cry, because somehow what broke me wasn't that he let go, it was that he let go so gracefully, so completely. He didn't try to make me feel small. He didn't shout or broadcast or punish. He just stepped away with dignity. And now all I had left was a door that wouldn't open and a life that wouldn't wait. I didn't mean to stop. I told myself I was just passing through. Just taking the long way back from the grocery store I didn't need to visit, on a street I hadn't dared drive down since the night I lost everything. But then I saw the lights, warm, golden, flickering through the curtains that used to hide our Sunday mornings and late-night movies and quiet, wordless dinners when talking felt too heavy. The front yard had been mowed. The flower bed was blooming with marigolds, her favorite, not mine, her favorite, my mother's. The porch glowed with soft yellow the way it used to when I was still expected, when I still belonged. I pulled to the curb across the street, engine humming low, fingers curled around the steering wheel like they were trying to hold on to something that wasn't there. Through the front window, I saw them. My mother, laughing. Glass of wine in her hand, head tilted back, in that way she only did when she felt truly comfortable. Across from her, a woman I didn't recognize. Then another, friends maybe, neighbors. People I never took the time to know, people who now filled the space I'd burned. And in the kitchen, Mason. No apron this time, just a simple shirt, sleeves rolled up, pouring wine, grinning at something one of the women said. The way he moved, it was different, loose, lighter, like something had unknotted in him. And the worst part? He looked good, not just physically, not in some superficial way. He looked free, unburdened, alive. There was a soundless conversation between them all, passing of plates, laughter, familiarity, not just acceptance, but happiness, inside my own home. I watched from behind the safety of tinted windows, lower in my seat than I'd like to admit, part of me hoping, aching for a glance from either of them, my mother, him, anything, recognition, a crack in the new foundation they'd poured without me, but none came. And then my mother, mid-laugh, mid-story, looked up, right at the window, right at me. I sat still, barely breathing. She didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't even blink. She just reached toward the lamp on the end table near the window, and with a soft flick, the porch light went dark, not slammed, not severed, just dark, like the end of a play when the curtains fall and the cast walks off, leaving you in your seat, staring at the stage long after everyone else has gone home. I waited another minute, maybe two, but Mason never looked up. He didn't need to. He knew I was out there, and he didn't care, because closure isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a door that doesn't open, and a seat that never gets filled again.